Welcome to Momentum Marketing with Stonehill Media, the podcast where we uncover the strategies that drive business growth and lasting impact. I'm your host, Janeil Lentz, and today I'm joined by Sohail Kamal, CEO of North Shore Sports Medicine. For over 35 years, they have been a leader in multidisciplinary healthcare, offering physiotherapy, massage therapy, and sports medicine services that help their clients recover, perform, and thrive. In this episode, we'll explore healthcare marketing, patient engagement, and digital strategy while gaining Sohail's insights on building a trusted brand and driving growth in sports medicine. Sohail, welcome.
Thanks very much. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. Can you please briefly introduce your background and what's your role at North Shore?
So I am the CEO and owner, but I actually started out as a patient, and that was about 17 years ago. And over time, I actually went through a process of working a little bit too much and playing a little bit too hard on the weekends, and discovering that I was in my 20s and I had an X-ray done by a doctor, and the doctor told me that I couldn't carry a backpack over 30 pounds, um, and that I had a spine of a 60-year-old. So suffice to say, I didn't see that doctor again, and went and saw a sports med doc. Sports med doc told me that I had to take my health in more into my own hands, and suggested I get more involved in my healthcare. So I ended up working at the physio clinic, and slowly but surely ended up taking on more and more at that organization. They asked me to join full time, which I had to decline at first because, to be honest, it didn't pay as much as the tech industry that I was working in. And eventually I made a decision to take a pay cut and focus wholeheartedly in healthcare. That was about 16 years ago.
Wow, that's definitely a lengthy tenure. What is North Shore's primary focus and target market?
Primary focus is really to change lives. At the end of the day, I speak to it. And in fact, we had a town hall meeting last night talking about some of the changes happening with 𝗧C𝗽𝗶𝗰. And one of the things I keep trying to go back to in terms of decision making is that at the end of the day, what we're here for is to change lives. My life has been changed by the practitioners in our space, and I owe so much to them. And that's really what we're trying to drive through to make sure that we can do the same thing for other people. If I can have that impact on, two handfuls of people, by the time I'm in my grave, I'll be very, very happy. So that's from a very basic level. That's what we're here for.
That's fantastic. Are there any business challenges happening right now?
Definitely. We have been growing at a fairly comfortable clip for the last 5 years ago. For the last 5 years, we've had a very low attrition rate. But one thing that we have come across now that we've gone through a good sort of period of growth is that we don't have space. North Van is a very, very expensive place to develop space commercially, and Deep Cove in particular is challenging. We're out of space, and so we have a limitation in terms of what we can do to be able to provide care from one aspect, but also A players want growth, and it's really important to constantly be on a bit of a growth path. And so we have to make sure we find ways to continue to grow at this point without expanding our spaces, but more importantly, for the long run, find space to be able to expand into, whether or not it's existing space or through acquisition. So at this point, we are looking at a third location via acquisition and expansion of both of our existing spaces.
Oh, okay, that's fantastic. Best of luck with finding a space. I know that, yeah, like you said, Vancouver is difficult for real estate across the board, and finding a great space is key, right? To be accessible to your clientele for sure. Do you have, outside of getting that third space and really looking to hit that expansion goal, is there anything else that you're tracking in terms of goals, or is it really just keeping up with that?
We are trying to really drive the expansion of services outside of our core. So we've got our physio and massage, which has been our bread and butter for a very, very long time. But a big part of what we're trying to do is really expand out of just looking at the physical body. So I had a friend pass away a few years back from mental health issues. And so we have brought on a counselor and really trying to make sure that people are comfortable. There's still a lot of stigma around mental health, making sure that we create space for patients to look at things, not just from a physical body perspective, but from the mental side as well. So really marrying a number of modalities to be able to drive the best care we possibly can. And that takes a lot of humbleness from existing practitioners. We have type A level physios who a lot of times feel that they can do everything and they can do a whole lot, but really trying to see how we can bring in other professionals to be able to really create that holistic long-term solutions that can really drive massive change for people. So
Hmm. And even looking into it, I know a few people that I've spoken to moving into that telehealth model, specifically when it comes to counseling, has been a game changer for them and for their staff, just really opening up those levels. Have you thought of how to, if you would be implementing any technology into this growth?
so we do telehealth for counseling, but we don't do telehealth for a whole lot of other things. I don't think we've succeeded in really pulling that off yet. Again, that's really an education piece. People are used to coming in to see us. We provide a very warm atmosphere. I think people are, really get to know us personally. And so the problem with counseling, I think, and that's the one niche that we haven't quite figured out, is how to make people feel comfortable and still have the privacy. You don't really need that much privacy for physio, but I think you need privacy for the counseling side of things. How we can kind of incorporate that in, and most definitely we're taking advantage of technologies to do that. But it's getting people used to the idea that we're not just the physical location, that you can see us in the comfort of your own home. But we're slowly working through that.
Hmm. Absolutely. Switching more into a marketing focus, how are you currently acquiring these new customers? You mentioned that you've been in a period of growth for the past 5 years, which is fantastic. So what is driving that?
To be honest, I would say that a lot of it's word of mouth. We're in the community a lot, and I think that one of our weaknesses, and I've had this when I gave talks at the local university. They said that A, they either hadn't heard of us, or B, they had heard of us, but it was through other people, and that's really how they had heard of us. Um, that's one avenue. We've spent a fair bit on Facebook ads, have had middling success with that. We're trying to figure out how to become more modern from a marketing perspective. I think we're modern from a sports medicine perspective, but we're not modern from a marketing perspective. So we have fairly strong SEO. Again, that just comes from our partnerships in the community. Don't think we've invested a whole lot in it, but we've had a fair bit of success there. And I think as we go over the next couple of years, I think we're going to be investing a lot more in that. We currently have a company that we've been working with just for about since December, and we've seen some progress there, and we're keen to see how that shifts things for the organization.
Mhm. Absolutely. And with anything, it always takes time to round out the edges and build up a platform or an advertising strategy or marketing strategy. It's fantastic that you've built such a strong community and such a strong relationship with your clients that they're then being that advocate for you and your services, which just speaks to the quality of the service provided. Absolutely. And are there any sales strategies that you're employing currently?
I don't know. I think I'd say that sales strategies. I don't know. We do try to follow up with patients. That's one thing we do. But again, this comes from a care perspective still. So if a patient comes in and they've been in 2 or 3 times and we feel that they aren't quite finished their treatment protocol, we will try to get the practitioners to give them a call personally and say, hey, just want to make sure you're doing well. Are there any progressions you want? How can I make sure that you get to where you need to get to? Um, it's a bit of an ask from the practitioners who are typically all fully booked. They don't need to do this kind of thing, but we really impress upon them that the value of creating that relationship is really about outcomes. And so having that personal relationship drives better outcomes. I'd rather see a patient come in 7 times and be at 105% than to come in 4 times, get re-injured, come in 4 times, get re-injured, come in 4 times, get re-injured. I'd love to see them actually, create a personal active system for themselves so that they're doing their exercises to quietly not have to come back in for physio. That's what makes us excited, right? Because they become advocates for not just our clinics, but they could become advocates for healthcare. They could become advocates for other physios wherever they end up in their lives, right? They'll be talking to people in all sorts of walks of life. The vast majority of our clinics come to us from North Vancouver. So those patients will be traveling anywhere talking about what physio has done for them. That's what gets me really, really
Mhm.
excited.
It's a bit of a double-edged sword. You kind of work yourself out of a job.
Yes, but no. I mean, the referrals speak for themselves, right? So I have no qualms in chasing after that. So
Yeah, and as you mentioned, you're really focused on that patient outcome, which is going to just in you know the dividends that will come back from that in terms of social proof and people just knowing that if they have something that you and your team are there to support them to get them through it. Because often in our lives, we don't just have, you know, one or two things, you know, as you age, everything starts falling apart bit by bit.
Yeah, I was on the fast track for that one in my 20s, so I've got a lot of empathy. I've been rebuilt a couple times. You can't see it on the screen very well, but I've had a couple pretty nasty accidents. My face looks different, to be honest, than it did 10 years ago. So
But then silver linings, right? You would have never been on the path that you're currently on
I
if that hadn't happened.
I do not lack motivation to drive healthcare. There's no doubt about that.
That's fantastic. I love that purpose driven side. A lot of the people that I've spoken with, they really have that. The catalyst for them getting into entrepreneurship has had some kind of purpose attached to it. So, like yourself, being in an unfortunate situation and requiring the services got you exposed to maybe and I'm probably speaking out of turn, but it got you exposed to maybe a path that you weren't, you know, planning on getting into.
Yeah, no, I was in bed on bed rest for a month and a half. I couldn't do any activity for a year. This is only 3 years ago. That's when I really made the switch to really be very clear about what I'm doing for the rest of my life. I had it already, but it really accelerated that. So I wake up every Monday morning with just jacked, and that's how I feel every, people can shake their heads in my staff sometimes Monday morning. They have their coffees and I've just got my wide eyes, but that's the way it is.
So, is there any other reason behind that passion?
No, I don't think so. I think it comes from my own personal experience. I love sports. I moved to BC from Ontario to be in the mountains. I was chasing the mountains every weekend before I kind of beat myself up and blew myself up a little bit. And thinking that I couldn't do those things anymore and losing that was really hard for me to to deal with. And at this point, I'm stronger than I've ever been. I'm stronger than I was in my 20s. I'm backcountry skiing. I'm playing hockey. I'm running in our run group. I'm in our TRX classes every once in a while. It's been I feel great, and that I the value of that for me is almost priceless. So
Hmm. Absolutely. And look, you know, that speaks to your personal growth, right? Like you're making these steps and you're active in your world. Are you applying any of those growth models into the business? I know we've talked about expanding into a third location and moving the business along that way, but is there I guess I'm looking for more of an esoteric kind of business goals and philosophy for the growth.
good question. If I can answer it in a different way, I think for a long time we were focused on healthcare as an organization, and I think that's what the organization is focused on. But for me personally, as I get busier and busier in my role, I'm starting to realize that my role is to actually transform the company away from, at first it was a physio clinic to a healthcare company, from a healthcare company to a leadership company. So if I can pull up the leaders at this point, the leaders in my organization, to pull up the staff underneath them, those staff will end up pulling up the patients. And what happens is, as we focus on personal growth for our staff and our leaders, that's what really drives that success moving down the chain. I think that's probably why our attrition rates have been so low, is that people know that we are wholeheartedly focused on ensuring that our practitioners and our staff have an opportunity to grow and develop in the organization. We have awards for this now that we've created over the last few years. We had one of our favorite staff, Hannah Folkman. She ended up working for 4 or 5 years trying to get into med school. She finally got into med school, and we've celebrated that. We've had one RMT go from a front desk role to going to school as an RMT to becoming an RMT. We have another one on her coattails who's doing the same thing. We have another staff person who's aiming to become a physio. We have a physio who went into counseling school and has now graduated. So these are all ways that we are really trying to pull up our staff and practitioners to their own professional progress so that they are developing their patients and helping their patients. And that's really where I see things in the long run, is that we're actually a development, like a personal development company, as opposed to even a healthcare company.
And did you like obviously that leadership model of getting everybody and growing them and developing has come over time. Did you set a specific intention for that leadership development?
No, I'm the fourth child of a pretty troubled family. I've always been trying to take care of people in my own family. I think it's my DNA. I don't know if it's anything other than a function of who I am. And the organization already had this in their DNA. The previous owner, who still is in the organization, who still develops me, I actually call her boss every once in a while too, and she shakes her head and she says that those days are done. But the truth is, she'll always be that person for me. She's always been there to help develop me. She put me into a program called Tech, to educate me and drive my growth about 5 years ago, after I'd been with the organization and had committed to it for over a decade. And so I'm still in that group, where it's a group of executives that just get together on a monthly basis to discuss their issues, almost like an ongoing MBA. We do case studies, not of companies, but of our own issues in our organization. And I get a mentor who speaks to me on a monthly basis, and we work through things. So it a lot of it's come from just my own personal development and growth, and what I've been bestowed upon, been given over the years, and trying to do the same for the folks in the organization right now. And it's something that I love doing. I'm not a healthcare practitioner myself. I always call myself a patient first, and I drive things from a patient perspective. But again, from that perspective, the thing that I love more than anything is seeing people internally grow and seeing them like develop as people. It gives me a ton of personal joy. So
Mhm. And so you mentioned that you're in that group that's essentially like I'm paraphrasing, more of a peer mentorship program. What has what are the business implications for that? Have you noticed anything? Have you seen anything that's really helped business wide from that relationship?
business owners, first of all, it can be quite lonely. You're by yourself at the top. You can't. There are a lot of things you can't talk to your staff about, frustrations. It gives an outlet for that, but also we all have the same. A lot of times across industries, we have very very similar issues and challenges. So it gives us a chance to bounce those ideas across. There was a point at which I knew a year ago I had too much on my plate and I wasn't keeping up. And it took me about 6 months in this group to kind of talk about it, that people kept saying, "Hey, I think you need either a GM or an executive assistant." I said, "I don't know. I don't know if I want to be able to do everything." But it became very, very obvious at some point that I couldn't keep up with the amount of, developing people takes time. It takes hard. It's I wouldn't call it hard work. It's hard work. You're spending a lot of quality time with people to really understand who they are and where they want to go. And so to be able to really focus on that, you kind of have to let go of some of the contract details, and so one of one of the outcomes is that I've got an outstanding EA that we've brought on board to help us with a lot of the work we do. And we've got a lot of systems in place with an HR person and whatnot to drive better development for an organization that's no longer this little clinic. It's actually growing to an organization of, 40 plus, probably 50 staff and practitioners at this point, over 2 locations. So
Hmm. So you mentioned that you wrestled with the idea of getting help to take stuff off your plate for about 6 months. Was there a catalyst moment? Was there something that just finally made you go, okay, I really have to pull the plug on this and get these processes, people, and systems into place?
when people I cared about were emailing me for a third time saying, "Hey, how come you haven't gotten back to me on this?" That was the catalyst. It's like, oh man, this is not my usual self. I used to be on top of my emails, and I can't keep up anymore. And it was just that communication piece. That alone was it.
I love how everything that you talk about comes back to a selfless place. So your catalyst was when people you love were feeling neglected. Your catalyst for getting into the business was to help people. You have that client centric focus for developing the business. So I love how everything circles back around to that place of, I'm going to, for lack of a better term, like a heart-centered business mindset.
I'm very lucky to be doing what I do. My staff, I mean, people never come to the organization saying, "Oh, I really want to work for Sohail." No one says that. They say, "I've either heard outstanding things about the practitioners and the staff there, or I know someone who works there and I want to work there as well." I'm very, very, very lucky. There's no question.
That's amazing. I love to hear that. I love to hear the passion and just hearing about the growth and hearing about how you're developing those people and how that's paying dividends across the board. So we're almost out of time. I'm out of questions, but I would like it if you were able to leave a piece of wisdom for that business owner that's getting it. I see your eyes go wide. Like, if you had one piece of advice that you could give a new business owner or somebody who's wanting to get into business, what would that piece of advice be?
Rank your values. Rank your values and let your decisions look at those values and make those decisions based on those values. And we have had tougher times years back when we had to make decisions based on financial limitations. It's been a bit better. I think we are in a stronger position now, so we can actually look at things and say, no, we know what we want to do. We know what the values are. You know, this ICBC thing is a really good example. Trying to figure out how do we support healthcare beyond everything else, right? But at the end of the day, having that list of values helps me sleep at night, helps me make my decisions. It gives clarity when sometimes as a business owner, and I know how it is for every single one of them, there's a million things coming at them. Sometimes I'll wake up, you'll wake up at 3 a.m. and you've got 17 things kind of running through your head. But having that list of values, knowing how you rank them will help you with the decision making. And even when those decisions ends up, even if they end up hurting you, you can sit on them and say, hey, you know what? At the end of the day, we're making that decision for the right reasons and we're sticking to it. So that would be my advice.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for everybody watching. I'm going to put links in the description so that you can get in touch with Sohail through North Shore Sports Medicine. If you're in the Vancouver area, give them a call, check them out if you need their services. Again, Sohail, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me.
Thank you, Janeil. Much appreciated.